So first of all, I guess what I wanted to do is circle back a little bit around the conversation that we had last week. The key takeaways that I had from last week, and I want to make sure that we're here, and I know that the kind of ask for all of you here, was to confirm with your clients or, whoever else you want to confide in, but basically to make sure it's not just us, that has this mindset, but that the community focus in terms of the near term, we agree that we want to, clean the APIs, that we want to, try to reduce the footprint. But the general consensus was that .NET Core, although, something out there, is not something that is like we have to sacrifice everything else. It should just be worked in and part of a collective byproduct. Is that, does everyone still agree that that's a safe assumption at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, anybody disagree? All right, good enough. So from that perspective, I think at this point, liquid content and some of the other stuff is something that we're going to need to start to converse on. And I guess this is where what I want to take the conversation with today is really, this is that crossroads. I think, we've been constantly, hemming and hawing about various crossroads that there is. We need to really take that direction of us leading and doing things. Peter started a conversation a little bit about untangling things and otherwise. So with that in mind, from a community perspective, as we look at the release cycle and we look at what we're looking to do, right? We've already committed to a 9.2.2 release, which is going to continue to be bug fixes and improvements. We have not really committed a lot beyond that. I know that Sebastian has been trying to organize some community members to progress in getting some GDPR support out there. I've not heard an update on where that might be. That would be something that would need to be either most likely a 9.3 release item, but has any, looks like Sebastian's not here today. So we need to kind of follow up with that. But are there other community focus areas of things that we want to tackle that would give us, release item details or roadmap details that we're looking for, for the next set of releases as a community? And don't everybody talk at once.
I had the asynchronous JavaScript and CSS editions for CDF that
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was a public commitment to 9.3, but that's what I was aiming for.
Okay. All right. So,
Oliver, is that different than the async pull request that's been on the DNN?
Yep. Yeah, this adds the async support to the script and CSS, HTML.
And deferred as well, right?
Yeah, and deferred.
That's the one that would allow us to start supporting async for the MVC platform, correct?
nope, that would be the other pull request, which is the one from Joe Brinkman.
Okay, that's one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Because
this
that
is
would be
all-
a big one that we could get. I think we should, if we can, get it in.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that it's worth talking about. For those of you that aren't aware, I know Brian, really, it's been you, Oliver, and myself, I think, mostly commenting. But the actual fix to support async in terms of, public async methods is as simple as one line change in default ASPX. The concern is that we're not exactly sure of the ramifications. From what everybody can tell so far, it's not really a problem until it becomes a problem, and it would be more of a module or a vendor that created the problem. So we may be protecting, it may be held off protecting somebody for somebody else. That feature, although a incredibly small change, I think is something that is more of a major feature for the platform and is closer aligned with a 10.0 release, because it is going to require us to do some testing, and to put some guidance and recommendations around it. Has anybody else taken a look at that or formed any opinion on it? I know it's been tossed around now for almost 2 years.
I see this being very helpful for Razor Pages support for next year for 10.0. I see this being very helpful for async support in the MVC platform that we currently have. But now you're right. I think that could cause a lot of problems.
Okay. All right. So I mean, I think that the change will make sense, but I think it needs a full performance regression. I want to keep that pull request open and updated though, because I think it's something that we are looking to do. The async and deferred support for the client dependency framework, it is a feature add. Is there any concerns with that being considered a minor release and something that would come as a 9.3, or is that a big enough feature that we believe it is a something that again warrants a major feature release designator?
I think 9.3 is fine.
Okay. So with that said, for a 9.3 we have that. Andrew, Razor Pages, you are targeting that for the January-February timeframe, is that correct?
Yeah, my plan is to have that ready for Summit, so sometime in February.
Okay. And so Razor Pages support is something that we would need to have go in. That would be a 10x release item. We have GDPR support, which is something that I do believe we still need to get out there, but we just don't know where. Is there anything else? I know, Peter, you've been talking about API simplification and starting some of that work. Do you have any plan or commitment on time involvement in prototyping that?
Yeah, exactly. My approach was this. First, I wanted from the .NET Core gurus and a kind of guidance basically on what pattern is going to be the best pattern to develop against. And I think I'm smart enough to just program by analogy. So I take whatever they say. It's like, use it this way, and then take some piece of our API and see if it will actually squeeze into this. Okay. And then that would be our start of a common discussion. Like, okay, is this going to be something for us? If so, then I think we let the horses run and we go, okay, well, this is going to be the pattern, and let's start migrating a couple of things over and see how that works. Okay.
And Peter, if you want, why don't you and I try to connect, or you, myself, Andrew, or anybody else, and get a meeting set up here sometime in the next couple of days, just to run through some of the .NET Core patterns.
Yes.
I've got a bunch of sample stuff I can show you that will make it really simple.
All right, well let's do that. That's I think the best thing to do.
Okay. So the other thing that I would like to try to get worked in from a community perspective that we haven't created a ticket for yet is Tomas and as part of the review of a few various tickets, has found a lot of inconsistencies with how we're doing, some string manipulation stuff. And I started doing some research on that. There's actually a pretty good performance gain in terms of memory footprint that we can achieve by resolving those issues. There's a lot of places where we're doing things like 2 lowercase and then doing a string comparison rather than doing, an invariant comparison. Or there's even sometimes where I found in one place that we're doing a 2 lower and then a 2 upper on the same string, which then gives us 3 copies of the same string in memory. So that's some API efficiency stuff that I'd like to try to tackle. I've got some time that I can do for that, but it's not really a big public facing thing at this point. But it's something I think will continue to keep us consistent as we move through, from one release to the next. Do we have any commitment for anything else aside from bug supports? I know there's been a lot of talk about persona bar stuff needing to be addressed, or UI issues needing to be addressed. Is there, within this group, do we have any specific needs there, things that we need to see, something that, for a 9.3 release, we have to fix X, anything like that?
Well, for me, I'd say 2 small things that are old features that were in the platform. One was page icons, which I think we should bring back, and it shouldn't be a lot of effort. And the localization still has some issues. There's open issues for both, but I think we should get that as soon as possible, I think.
And page icons were removed in 9.2, correct?
Yes, page icons were removed in 9, and yeah, it never brought back, but there's still an image uploader, so I think it would be a quick addition to just put that in the page UI. Everything in the background is there to if you upgrade a site, they still work. So in the background, everything is there. It's just a little UI issue.
Okay. Okay, so I think there's a side conversation in the chat about page icons and how much they're used. I agree they're not necessarily used a bunch, but mega menus, and we still have support for them everywhere. So the menu component supports them, the database supports them. We just don't have a UI to support them. So from my perspective, and this I think is the big thing that I guess I would like us to, prototype and research, is what features do we have that are still half implemented, right? I would like to know from a community perspective, what features do we have that over time lost their UI, only work from the database,
or even ones that were never implemented, right? Which touches on the next discussion. So stuff that is there in the database and just doesn't have a UI.
Right. So
I can think of basic Google Analytics configuration too. I think everything works if you edit the config file. There's just no UI to enter your code.
Right.
So what I would like us to try to do from a community is to try to get at least a longer running, release cycle roadmap of what we're going to do. And I think we've got a lot of little stuff that we can do. Google Analytics as a UI, I think, is huge. But I think if we do it, we need to also look at what people are doing these days, which is they're also doing Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager. And if we have a way to be able to support that, I think it would be fantastic. We also have 2 partial pull requests that have came in from Brian, with one of them being the maintenance mode, if I recall correctly, right? To be able to basically mark the site as under maintenance
It's called locking, but yeah.
or locking. Okay. So that's something that needs a user interface. And I guess what I'm trying to do here is we've got some direction, and we need to try to get some community champions in terms of who has some time to identify to this, and then how can we slot these into a release. So if we have a 922 release coming that's taking care of fixes, what kinds of things can we get in there aside from the bug fixes? I think that minor UI changes, to add back a missing feature is something that we can, do those kinds of things. Scott has a question in chat about getting the Google Analytics and tracking connector.
I meant to say tag. So there's already an evoke. You have a Google Analytics connector and a Google Analytics Tag Manager connector with a UI to configure it.
I am going to, Ash, I'm going to let you comment, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that the answer to that is going to be no. And you're on mute. You there, Ash?
So it looks like he's unmuted in the Zoom software, but it's like not picking up on his mic.
Yeah, we're still not hearing you.
Well, I guess I'm not the only one with Zoom issues. It just crashed my computer and I had to reboot.
But those connectors are now part of the platform, right? As of 9.2, the idea of developing connectors, right?
Well, the idea of developing connectors is an extension point that's been there. This is still that awkward gray area, right? That we've had for a long time in terms of the extension points that they're leveraging are there, but the differentiator, the value add, is in the implementation. It's just like, a cache-in provider. Anybody can build a cache-in provider.
Are y'all seeing Will Morganwick's comments here where he's saying it's tied to the cloud the way that?
That's right, it is. Yeah, it's using the DNNAPI.com.
Can you guys still hear me? Yeah, you can hear me.
There you go.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so I think so Will answers it here. So I think that's a no then.
Okay, yeah.
So while I have the mic here, Mitch, so there will be, you're asking about what else might be in who else might be contributing. Of course, DNN Corp will be adding some stuff, but I don't think there is anything major there. It's mostly bug fixing and very minor enhancement. I think there was one that came in to put a label on the module pane when you try to drag and drop. Many people have said that you don't know what pane has what module. Some modules don't have any default data. So I think things like that will come in. There is nothing major planned yet.
Okay. So what I would like to do at this point, again, I wanted to get the group thinking about this. I'm going to create a shared Google Doc with these notes in terms of kind of grouping things into things that we're planning on, things that are planned for 10x, just because we have a couple of things down the road that we don't want to lose sight of, and then prototype and research items. So things that we really need to get some community involvement. What I'd like to do is have you guys take, the time this week between now and next week's meeting, to really think about what we can do, who else we need to get in, what things that we need, because some of this stuff isn't, documented in issues yet, or they were documented in Jira a long time ago. But what I want to try to do is get to a point where we can start to shape what the release cycle is going to look like, right? We have 9.2.1, which is coming, which I want to give Oliver here a second to chat about that a little bit, but then I want to be able to start planning ahead so that we can publish a roadmap so that we can really work on bringing things into a more public light so we can get a direction. So, with that, and I want to make sure we have an owner assigned so that we can really start to look at some, I hate to say accountability, but the whole goal here being as a community-led organization, as we go and say that, okay, we're going to do this release, we want to try to get there, sooner and later. So with that, I guess, Oliver, I know I've seen a couple messages going back and forth today regarding 9.2.1. Where do you see things there, and what do we need to do to help with 9.2.1, first of all?
I don't have any update from where ESW is in their internal testing of that release. I was hoping to get the release candidate out before the 4th, but I just didn't have the opportunity to. So that's what I'm working on right now during this meeting and after the meeting. Hopefully that'll be available for everyone to get and do any testing. I would like to still wait 2 weeks from when the release candidate is posted, since that's what we've already verbally said that we were going to do 4 releases going forward.
Yeah, I guess the only I would agree, that's what the community has agreed to do. The only exception that I could see to this, and it would only be if it was unanimously approved by this group. This release was supposed to be a community-driven release. It was not. The package that we're deploying is a DNN Corp created package. All of that process is being done. I think we could phrase it to the community that we wanted to get the release out there without any further delay. But I think there is some reputation damage that would be there if we did. I also think it's completely feasible if we get the release candidate posted, we give the 2 weeks and we go from there. Any thoughts amongst this group? Because the number one thing that has to be fixed in the short term is our automated build support for us to be able to create the packages. That is the thing that will block a 9.2.2 release, in my opinion, is we have to be able to be creating those builds on our own.
So we can create them right now. I need somebody else to merge the 2 pull requests and the persona bar repositories.
Okay.
That's the only thing that's holding up VSTS from being able to run on the main branch.
Okay, and all of the issues that we had, Oliver, or that you had are squared away now?
I believe so, yeah. I think it's just waiting on a second review and someone to merge it.
Okay, and does that include symbols packages and other stuff as well?
That is just the install and upgrade, and then everything else is going to be like a round 2 update.
Okay.
In order to get some of that stuff working, I think we're going to have to do a reorganization of the persona bar and shorten some of the directories and collapse the 3 repositories into a single repository.
Okay. Well, why don't you and I circle back and we'll get the review done and get that on there. But that, I think from my perspective, I want to make sure that we are building that. And I think the number one priority is that for a 9.2.2 release, before DNN Corp begins their cycle, it needs to be from a build that we provide or that was provided automatically out of VSTS rather than an internally created build. And given that we had some communication there, and I guess we have both Tomas and Ash on there, can we get the commitment from the corp side that for 922 that process will be followed? And you're on mute again, Ash.
Sorry, yeah, that is the plan, right? That we want to use the packages that are coming from a community. Having said that, I want to make sure that the package is solid, right? Because anytime you make a packaging change, we've had it historically. It's always created problems. So someone has to kind of look into not file by file, but folder by folder, like do comparison between the previous releases, the new releases, and make sure not missing anything. Make sure the version numbers are all updated and things. There are lots of little things that can go wrong. So someone has to make sure that the packages are rock solid. And when they are, then we will do it. But that is the intent, right? We will shut down, we'll pause all our internal platform builds. We won't compile anymore. We will take the package directly. But I think we need to wait for that, whoever is able to sign off on those packages and make sure they're good.
Okay. And I've done some initial comparisons. Do we have anybody else that has some time in the next couple of days that could work with Oliver to do a comparison between the VSTS generated ones and the one that came from ESW?
I mean, I thought we already did that like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I guess that's true. We did do a file by file.
Was the yarn output for the persona bar, which not having access to the ESW internal build server, what versions of everything that you guys are using internally, it's not something that anyone from the outside can really compare. We're using now the latest version of yarn. We've done initial testing, releasing the builds to a wider group is what will be next. If any issues are found, either in third-party components or while ESW internally tests the package against, your Evoke products and whatever else you're doing internally. That's just how we're going to find the issues and fix them. But we need commitment that the next release is going to be handled this way. Switch things over, and then just like any issue, if there's problems, log a bug, and we'll address it quickly so it won't be holding up the release. But if we start on it now versus starting on it the week before 922 is supposed to come out, we'll have that time to make sure everything's working as it should.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. So Oliver, coming back to RC, do you have a package from Tomas?
I've got the one from a week ago that's missing a couple of pull requests. I haven't received another one yet, so that's just the one I'm moving forward with. It would be nice to have the package that you guys are using for testing. I doubt your testers are using a old package with missing pull requests, but that's just the only thing I've been provided.
Tomas, why don't you send him the latest package then? I don't know what versions are.
Yes, let me do it right now. Although, what about the links that are downloadable from DNNsoftware.com?
I think that should be current as well.
I mean, that's the install package. We need at least the install and upgrade. I would like all
that doesn't have the upgrade packages?
Release candidate. And I mean, are your testers going to the nightly build page, and is that where they're getting their builds from, or are they?
Oh no, they're not. They're not. But I thought it was completed with the same packages. But doesn't matter. I'll just.
Yeah,
post.
It doesn't have the upgrade package.
Don't worry. Let me do it right now. I'll just message you in a minute.
Yeah, also the source package, right? So in fact, if we're doing a release candidate, we should upload all the packages that are release candidates. Symbol package, install package, upgrade package, source package. NuGet doesn't need to go.
Okay. All right. So for that one, I would just want, we need to get that taken care of. The only other thing I had on the list, and I just want to make sure we get it cleared for 922, is we need to make sure that the CK editor source is also confirmed on where that's coming from, because I believe that the package version that was included in the deployment was released from a internal DNN Corp repository rather than the community or the DNN Connect repository.
Yeah, so I think if we go to this link, so I had a task internally to get it pushed. So I'll just share the link here. I think you see some commits from our side, and those were all merged. There was just one, actually. Maybe that contained everything 9 days ago. No, actually, there are a few more. Is it? May 30th, May 30th. Yeah, there's actually, there's quite a few.
So has 921 been moved over to use DNN?
No. We don't plan to use that. We don't plan to use 921. So 921 continues to build. The source code for continues to build using our internal repository. 922, the intent would be for you to pick up a release package from CK Editor and use that. And Oliver, I know you're planning to download that and compile. I don't recommend that. I recommend you work with the owners of DNN Connect and make sure that they have a release of CK Editor, a package released, and then you grab that package and just simply include it, because who knows how volatile
there'll be a couple different pipelines that are running, but for the
because who knows what
we'll be grabbing a node.
Right. I mean, ideally, you should only include, and we don't even have to include the source code for CK Editor.
No, the source code for it should be included. It's a core platform feature.
Right, but what I'm saying is that we are using we're treating this as a sort of a third-party component that we're including into the package. So we should just include that as if it's a jQuery, right? As if any other component, third-party component that we're including. So that's how I think maybe we can talk separately, but for sure we shouldn't try to compile it. I think the owners for this, for
the nightly build pipeline and for pull request verification, I would like to keep that happening. It's quote unquote a core feature. It ships with the core platform.
I understand that, Oliver, but
sure
what if
pull requests and API changes is important, so we don't run into an issue where something was inadvertently removed or broken. And the source code as well, like going to get a release in a year for something that was released a year ago, trying to hunt through different third-party repositories and find the appropriately tagged release and then clone that. It's a lot easier just to include the source in the source zip. So if anybody needs to make any changes or look how that version is built, it's an easy process instead of a very difficult one.
Yeah, let's take this offline and get a discussion going. I mean, we have set a standard has been set in the past with CDF and everything else that third party has been brought in, that the source has been included with it. I want to just make sure that we get that process consistent and repeatable. The whole goal here is to not have accidental situations happen, which I guess this leads me into the next piece is really around the release cycle and the concept of hot fixes. So situations came up where we've learned that DNN Corp has been releasing random hot fix DLLs that are branches off of branches of DNN with one work item in it. I think there's some interest in the community in doing more regular hot fix processes. And I'm curious, within this group, there's a lot of effort. And right now, I don't believe that as a community, we have enough resources to commit to major regular hot fix releases, but I'm curious. I'd like to get there, but I don't think that we have the resources to do it now. What does the group think?
For me, who is still somewhat nostalgically attached to the DNN V1 days, where we didn't have, let's say, weekly releases with hot fixes. I don't see why it's worth unearthing that much, so to speak. I mean, if it's a security issue, fair enough. We all scramble to make sure there's a new release out there and everyone gets updated. But when it's hot fixes, I mean, we usually lump those together in maintenance releases, and whether those maintenance releases come once a week or once a month. For my audience, at least, my clients, etc., I sincerely doubt that that's a huge thing. I mean, I can't, for the life of me, imagine people updating every week. I mean, today I get an email from a client who's on 5.3 something. So, but I stand to be convinced that a weekly maintenance release is something we should strive for.
From my perspective, one of the things that I'm looking at is our release cycle so far, right, has been very jagged, right? We have a bunch of releases, then we have no releases for 6 months, then we have releases, where I'm wondering if a compromise here is that we agree that we are going to have a maintenance release every 2 months, or we get to some sort of cadence to where we have a release on a regular basis. So we get a 921 out in July, we get 922 out in September, and then we commit to either a big release or a minor release, in October or November. I don't want to get into the hot fix business, but it came up. And I want to make sure that, my immediate thought of that's way too much work is not,
Well, I mean, I think people react badly to ESW, releasing DLLs to their clients that are essentially forks. I don't see this as such a huge issue. I mean, I have clients too, customers, and I can release whatever I bloody well please to them, and and get away with it because it's my risk at the end of the day whether the platform remains in step with whatever I've done to it. So I don't see how this drives or informs our decision on this. I think it has to be like, what is the healthy way forward for the platform? And I think, like you said, we have regular maintenance releases. I'd love to have, and I've said this once in the past as well. I mean, we used to have like a .6 or a .7, release, meaning, we've had 6 or 7 iterations to stabilize a platform. And usually they turn out to be very, very popular platforms for a very long time, right? Because they're deemed stable and people tend to stick with them.
But on the flip side, a lot of those quote unquote stabilization builds weren't really stabilization builds. They included new features. I mean, I think this is really one of the first times where we're drawing a hard line on version numbers of what's included.
Right. Yeah.
As for the hot fixes, though, I mean, a weekly schedule is crazy. It's something that we shouldn't say next week we're going to do a hot fix release. But I think whatever the schedule is, we should be accepted for getting hot fixes out and getting them out quicker than we're getting releases out right now. Every client's different. A lot of clients that I work with have the resources to fix an issue that's affecting production. They have the resources to test it. And if they know, if I submit this pull request, if everything's tested,
Yeah. So
getting it out sooner into an official build is going to justify their investment in the platform. Like right now, we've got fixes and changes that have been sitting in GitHub for 18 months now, and if that's the turnaround that anyone's customer can expect for donating their time, money, and resources to the platform, it's not really going to foster a lot of development.
Right.
If we say we're going to do a hotfix release for any production issue that affects, maybe just initially say evoke customers to keep the amount of issues down. If it's work that ESW is already doing, if they're already submitting it into the development branch and releasing a hotfix internally to their own customers, I think it's worth the effort to make sure that our CI system will account for that and be able to generate hotfix releases against a release branch.
Yeah, but okay, but the one thing is an absolute prerequisite. It means that everything that goes into those maintenance releases is deemed to be of zero risk, i.e. they don't change any method signatures. They don't, I think we've kind of agreed on a kind of a list of good semantic versioning to be done.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing too that would help is I think right now we've had a lot of issues that are fixed in the release branches, and then they're never actually merged back into development. I think that was something that.
Right. So one example, for instance, that cropped up today was an update to a JavaScript dependency, which it's not a big deal because it's actually internal, I believe, to the code of the specific component. But still, my gut reaction was like, are we, this is polishing, this is bringing stuff up, so it should be probably pushed to a minor release, not a maintenance release, right?
I'd have to look into that issue a little bit more in detail.
But yeah, so anyway.
But yeah, each issue definitely has its own risk and reward.
Right, and because our CI system will never be able to account for third-party dependencies on our stuff, right? So we want to make sure we keep risk of third-party breakage to an absolute minimum when we get to maintenance releases.
I mean, the CI system, I mean, that's part of the reviewer's job is to review that code and sign off on it. The CI system, right now we're compiling 6 different projects on checking for any build errors. And as we go through this process, if we come across problematic third-party extensions, we can add more tests to that automated system. And nothing's ever perfect. Everything requires testing and oversight.
Yeah. Others?
All right. So I think I created a Google Doc, shared it out in the channel with the direction, the future planning. I think from a release perspective, I think it makes sense that we look at doing things on a more regular basis. I agree with you, Will. I think that as community focused. We just need to get something out there. I think if we can set some expectations, I don't want to put a lot with dates until I want to get a 922 release out there so that we know exactly what the level of effort to build package release and do that manual effort on our side looks like. And I think that we can kind of talk a little bit more about the actual release schedule, what we want to have in the releases next week, once we've had a little bit more of a chance to kind of see what things are looking at. I think the big thing for me right now, the big thing is, as we look at the features that we want, we have to remember that we don't have, real developer resources to throw at things. So as we're looking at things, we want to make sure that we have the right, the right volunteer efforts to be able to get things accomplished. Because it's great to have amazing plans. We just need to make sure that we have a true pathway forward in terms of identifying what we've got. I have a hard stop in 2 minutes myself. I think a number of the rest of us do. The last thing I guess I have for you guys with this schedule-wise, right? This is, Peter started a conversation about separating and working to get ESW to operate, just like everybody else in terms of consuming the packages and everything else. I think we're finally getting one step closer to that. I do believe that where we've obtained our stance from a community in terms of the future direction, strategy, and concern, I think it does warrant that I have a conversation with Andy, simply because it's came up with liquid content, and we need to make sure that the messaging that is shared, is consistent across. So in other words, making sure that the community, we don't have a virtual user conference in the future where one thing gets said and a different thing happens. So I am going to work with Clint and Ash to try to coordinate a conversation and just let Andy know where we sit, and kind of see what happens from there. That may change the story with liquid content, but I think that, regardless of if we get liquid content, or we decide to, roll our own structured content concept, I do think we need to find a place to put that in there as well, for our future. So I want to just continue focusing on the roadmap and the direction, and continuing to get things moving. And then we'll need to, continue to share that direction with the community and continue to get people rallied together. So I appreciate everything from everyone, and I'll try to keep things a little bit better organized next week, but this was kind of a regroup and a rethink after last week's conversation.
Sounds good.
That's good.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody.